Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Russia and Ukraine have agreed to exchange prisoners after peace talks in Istanbul, as Turkey says it will take steps to arrange a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. A 45-year-old man has been charged with murder after an attack at a rally supporting Israeli hostages in Colorado. And trading on the Damascus Securities Exchange has restarted after being closed for 6 months as leaders plan to rebuild its economy. Ukraine and Russia have agreed to exchange prisoners of war who are severely wounded, as well as those under the age of 25. The announcement was made by Ukraine following a second round of direct talks between both sides in Istanbul. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Erdogan has said Turkey will take steps to arrange a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. For more on this, I'm joined by Ukrainian MP Yulia Sirko. Yulia, so glad to have you on the show this evening. Thank you for joining. Kyiv and Moscow have agreed to a prisoner swap after the peace talks in Turkey today. Is this a positive step forward between Russia and Ukraine?
Hello from Kyiv, and thank you for hosting me. Yes, it's a positive step. It's one of the probably 100 steps we need to do to get into the peace talks. But it's just one small step at this point of time. As you know, during the previous meeting, it was agreed and actually implemented the exchange of prisoners of war 1,000 to 1,000. And this time, Russia and Ukraine agreed to exchange all wounded or badly injured prisoners of war from both sides. As well as from Ukrainian side, it was requested, and I hope we will get approval from Russia's side to send to Ukraine all kidnapped kids, Ukrainian kids, and we have it more than 25,000 kidnapped and kept in Russia at this point of time.
Yulia, ahead of these talks, Ukraine carried out an attack on Russian air bases with drones. Putin's forces then launched a deadly attack hours before the peace talks. Are the actions from both countries overshadowing ceasefire talks and a possible ceasefire in the future?
Actually, I don't think it will influence much. We're expecting that Russia will hit back. That's why all safety measures and civilians should go in Ukraine to bomb shelters any time of alert. But in general, I don't think it will shift any negotiations, any peace deals to any significant step. I think the Russia is not ready for peace deal at this point of time because they are sending to negotiations and to the peace talks in Turkey a very low-level delegation, people who are not taking any decisions, unfortunately, and that's why we all expect that Putin will take decision and stop the war. But Ukrainians in general do not believe this is the case at this point of time. So probably the international community should put more pressure on Putin so he take this decision, stop his troops, withdraw his troops from Ukrainian territories and stop the war.
Would Ukraine like to see the US putting more pressure on Russia at this time to come to a ceasefire deal? Is Donald Trump doing enough?
I don't think he is doing enough, but he started to realize that Putin is actually buying time and fooling him. And I hope he will realize it more and more. And as I know, they have a package of sanctions, including secondary sanctions against Russia, which could help stop this war and war machine of Russia. So we hope that US will put it forward, will push it, as well as European our European partners and other partners will join or put their own sanctions, including secondary sanctions, into Russia. Because Russia, honestly, will stop the war only when they will have no money for the war. For that, they need to stop export of oil, gas, resources, as well as close possibilities to import spare parts for producing weapons. Unfortunately, this is not the case at this moment, and we are working hardly that sanctions should be imposed, and Russia, in this case, could stop the war.
And Yulia, the Turkish president has pitched a meeting with Putin, Zelensky and Trump. How will this meeting between the three leaders actually help the ongoing talks? Because as you said there, it's Putin that needs to end the war.
I think if Erdogan and Zelensky can bring arguments for Russia to these discussions and talks, and Putin will listen to it, maybe it will change his mind. But Putin is the only person who can stop the war, and he is a decision maker in peace negotiations, peace deal, and stopping the war. So the only person who can do it, it's Putin. But we saw that Putin already requested meeting with Zelensky, and he didn't show, basically. So he didn't come. Instead, a very low-level delegation came from Russia, and okay, it's resulted in 1,000 prisoners of war swapped, but nothing more. So I think the only person who should be convinced, must be convinced, and must take decision, it's Putin. The ball on his side.
As peace talks between Russia and Ukraine appear to keep on going around in circles, the fighting is raging on. Yulia, what exactly is life like in Ukraine right now?
The life is, we are all the time, we have air raids, air alerts, and we are going to the bomb shelter, my kids and myself sleeping in a basement, basically all the time. We have these air alerts. It's the same with a school during the school days. When they are going to school and there is air alerts, drones coming or missiles coming, they are going to the bomb shelter and spending at least 8 hours per week in a bomb shelter. So that's unfortunately our life. But still life going on. We have cultural events. We have kind people who are supporting each other. We have a lot of humanity in the heart. So, and I can tell you that as Ukrainians, we didn't hit a single Russian civilian or a single Russian kid. And that's yesterday, the big attack for more than 30% of bombers, jet fighters of Russia, but not a single civilian or single kid or single woman was injured or killed during this attack. So we are fighting as fighters, and unfortunately Russians fighting as a terrorist. That's why life of civilians not so how to say it, not so happy that it could be.
Yulia, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you having on the show.
Thank you too.
We can now speak to Nikita Mendkovich, head of Eurasian Analytical Club and political scientist. Nikita, it's brilliant to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. I was just in conversation with Ukraine's MP Yulia. What needs to happen to get Putin in a room with Zelensky for direct talks?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. The second one, I don't see any reason for Mr. Putin to be in one room with Mr. Zelensky to finish the war. Mr. Zelensky is no one. He's not a president more. His time has finished. He's not Ukrainian himself. He's a Jew with an Israel passport. He's a puppet of Western governments, pretends, like an actor, to be a president of Ukraine. Russia, of course, wants to finish this war, But we need someone who can finish it. We need a president, an official representative of Ukrainian people and Ukrainian power, not a Western agent who is ready to sign anything and fly away to his favorite Israel. I don't think it's a good option to have a dialogue with Zelensky. I think the first step, what should be done by Kyiv regime, is removing all Western agents from the power, including Mr. Zelensky, take those troops back from the Russian-occupied territories, including Kherson, Zaporozhye, Pokrovsk cities, and then we will have a good chance to start a peace dialogue. Russia isn't one who started this war. Ukrainian mercenaries, headed by Western countries, started it. And the only reason why it's still continuing is that Europe and other NATO countries sending ammunition and weapons, sending money for mercenaries to continue this terrible war against Russia and Ukrainian people.
Nikita, if I could just quickly interject, I am hearing you and what you're saying, but Europe would strenuously deny the claims that you are making towards them. President Zelensky also won an election fair and square. Elections don't happen in countries when it's during wartime. This is known across the world. So who do you suggest should replace Zelensky, and how can they hold elections in Ukraine during war?
First of all, the time of Zelensky has finished. The same reason to have a dialogue with Zelensky as a president of Ukraine. In the same way, we should have a dialogue with Mr. Clinton as a president of the United States, not Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, only Mr. Clinton, because long years ago he was elected. It doesn't mean anything. As I said, Zelensky does not represent Ukrainian people. In fact, his regime is illegal. There is no elections since 2014 because many territories of Ukraine have split it. They don't wanted to have any kind of deal with fascist regime established in 2014 with support of Western governments. People of Donbass, people of Crimea, people of Kherson, they are now part of Russia. They are fighting for those freedom against Europe, against Great Britain and United States, against Zelensky and other traitors. They want to be free. They want to choose those future. Without Zelensky, without American corporations, without British banks, they want to be free. Is it hard to understand? For
Nikita, I just want to move on to a little bit about reports that have suggested the Ukrainian drone attack on multiple air bases across Russia is a humiliating security breach for Vladimir Putin. Some Russian papers and social media users are arguing for nuclear response. Is this likely, and why nuclear response?
First of all, we should understand that we should ignore all information we get from so-called Ukrainian sources. For example, your guest said that no one citizens were killed and injured during a Ukrainian terrorist attack a day ago. It is absolutely lie. Ukrainian agents exploded 2 bridges in Bryanskaya and Kurskaya Oblast. One of the train was keeping passengers. 7 people are dead, more than 90 are injured. Of course, we see that your guest was a liar. She was a part of Western propaganda trying to defend aggression against Russia and Ukrainian people. The same situation we have discussing this attack against Russian air bases. Ukraine pretend to have some kind of significant victory. Of course, it's not. Only 6 planes was damaged during this attack. Only these 6 damages have video proofs presented by Ukrainian side. All other words are lies and propaganda. Of course, Russia see this terrible attack. Of course, the more important not planes, but people, citizens of Russia, killed by terrorists coming from Ukrainian side.
Nikita, are we able, to just interject there? I just wanted to ask you a final thought, but really on the peace talks we saw today in Turkey. Russia passed on a memorandum to Ukraine on reaching lasting peace and full ceasefire today. We saw that. Now, what are the terms for this likely to be? Are you able to tell us?
I think that we have very few chances for any kind of big step forward, because the history shows us nothing good came with negotiations with terrorists. So-called Ukrainian government are terrorists, killing citizens of Russia and of those former countries, killing citizens in Donetsk, in Kherson. The problem of even exchange of war prisoners is that the half of the people given back to Russia by Ukrainian side, they are not soldiers. They are political prisoners. They are citizens of Ukraine arrested for having a pro-Russian views. Of course, it's really hard to deal with negotiations in this situation. I think that as I said before, the only step forward is ban of any kind of support of Kyiv regime. No ammunition, no weapons. And this war will be finished in 2 weeks. It will be enough. And Ukrainian people will finally become free. Without Zelensky, without other Western agents, they will live free and will have a chance to choose those future.
Nikita, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you on the show and to have your insights. Once again, thank you. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. A Palestinian doctor whose 9 children were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza has died from injuries sustained in the same attack. Dr. Hamdi al-Najjar was treated in hospital for brain and internal injuries, but died on Saturday. His wife and their 11-year-old son, who remains in hospital, are the sole survivors of the family. The Israeli Defense Forces said it was reviewing the incident at the time of the attack. Now, according to reports, an Iranian diplomat has said Iran is prepared to reject a US proposal to end a decades-long nuclear deal dispute. The senior diplomat said the proposal fails to address Tehran's interests or soften Washington's stance on uranium enrichment. Nationalist opposition candidate Karol Nawrocki has narrowly won Poland's presidential election. It's considered a major blow to the centrist government's efforts to secure Warsaw's pro-European orientation. During his campaign, he positioned himself as someone who defends traditional Polish values and aligned himself with US conservatives, including President Donald Trump. Italy's Mount Etna has erupted with large plumes of ash and smoke seen rising from Europe's largest active volcano. Videos show a huge plume of ash, gas, and rocks spewing out of the volcano this morning. Authorities have said there was no current danger to the population. Now, a 45-year-old man has been charged with murder after people at a rally supporting Israeli hostages were targeted with petrol bombs and a makeshift flamethrower. 8 were injured during the attack when a man reportedly shouted "Free Palestine." The FBI have called it a suspected terror attack, but authorities haven't confirmed if anyone died during the incident. For more on this, I'm joined by our correspondent Nick Harper, who is in Washington. Nick, always great to have you on the show. What else is the FBI saying about this incident, and what more do we know about the suspect?
Well, Leigh-Ann, very few details about this 45-year-old suspect, although police say that he was not known to them for any previous actions. This seems to be his first encounter with the authorities. His name is Mohammed Sabri Solomon, a 45-year-old Egyptian national who was living in the Colorado area. A mugshot of him has been released because he was detained by police after the incident took place. In that mugshot, he seems to have a bandage over his right ear, and we're being told that he was injured as a result of that incident, sustaining burns to his hands during the attack. Now, the FBI say that this suspect allegedly put together a makeshift flamethrower. They haven't precisely detailed how this took place, but there has been some reporting that it was a garden sprayer that had been filled with gasoline, and that he also had a number of Molotov cocktails with him, some of which he used. Some reporting suggesting an additional 16 were found at the site of the attack. And the attack took place at this weekly march that takes place every Sunday in Boulder, Colorado. It's a march in solidarity for the Israeli hostages who are still being held by Hamas. We are expecting this suspect to appear in court in about 2.5 hours' time from now. He's facing a number of charges, but already authorities are saying more charges will be added to what he eventually has to face.
Nick, what is the current condition of the victims, and can you share more about who they actually are?
Well, we know that there were 8 in total, 4 men and 4 women, all of them older in age, ranging between 52 and 88. We're told that in amongst those 8 victims, there were a mother and daughter, and the mother is described as the eldest victim, so 88 years old, but also that she was a Holocaust survivor. Police at this stage saying that there were no fatalities, but their injuries ranging right from critical all the way down to minor. However, there is a suggestion, because we know that the suspect has been charged with 2 counts of murder, there is this suggestion that potentially police have not yet revealed fatalities that may have taken place. So we're waiting for more details coming out of that court appearance, but we do know that 8 people were injured in this attack.
And Nick, what has the response from the White House been?
Well, they have been speaking about this accusation that the suspect was here in the United States illegally, that he was on a work visa that expired. He had applied for asylum, we're being told, but that asylum claim remains pending. Donald Trump has been posting on social media just in the last few minutes in which he has said that his heart goes out to the victims of this terrible tragedy, and he called it a horrific attack, but also said that it would not be tolerated, and then called for the suspect to be deported, saying that acts of terrorism will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because the FBI and other authorities are saying that this was an anti-Semitic attack, a hate crime, an act of domestic terrorism. And as well as authorities speaking about the violence that took place, we're also hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, all of them condemning what took place in Boulder, Colorado, and saying that much more must be done to try and stop these types of attacks.
Nick, are there concerns about the potential for similar attacks, and what steps are being taken to prevent something like this happening again?
Well, Leigh-Ann, any time that something like this happens, there is that increased concern that we may see similar attacks. Police at this stage are saying they believe the suspect acted alone. They are not saying that there is any suggestion of further attacks to come. They're not seeing any chatter on social media that would suggest such things. But we do know that authorities in some of the biggest cities across the United States, here in Washington, D.C., in New York, also in Los Angeles, they are stepping up security, in particular around Jewish places of worship and Jewish community centres, because there is this real feeling in the Jewish community that they are under attack. They are saying that they feel on edge. Just here in Washington, D.C., about a week and a half ago, we saw 2 Israelis being targeted in what seemed to be an apparent hate crime, a young couple who was shot dead outside of a Jewish museum. And again, in that instance, the alleged suspect also reportedly shouted "Free Palestine" around the time of the attack. So Jewish people here in the United States saying that they are feeling worried, and authorities trying to respond to that concern by upping security.
Correspondent Nick Harper, thank you so much for joining us. Trading on the Damascus Security Exchange has restarted today after being closed for 6 months. It's the start of Syria's new leaders' plans to try and begin rebuilding its economy after nearly 14 years of civil war. Syrian Finance Minister attended the reopening and said that it signals that the country's economy is beginning to recover. For more on this, I'm joined from Damascus by Dr. Osama Kadi, Director of Kadi Economic Consultancy. Absolute pleasure to have you on, Dr. Osama. What does the reopening of the Damascus Stock Exchange signal about the country's economic future after 14 years of civil war?
It signals really a positive step towards economic recovery and stabilization. It signals to the whole world that Syria is opening new page with the world, indicates that the government ready to revitalize the economy and push that economic growth even further and further, trying to attract more investment, open for the world. You know, Syria has been since 1979 under like a country that supports terrorists. So we are isolated. We've been isolated from the whole world. Even we have previously Damascus Stock Exchange, but it's really like some sort of like paralyzed stage. It's not really very active. They used to open 3 days a week from 10 to 1 o'clock, 3 days only. So it's really, it was just a building with no, not much activity there. But right now, they're heading toward more effective stock market.
And Dr. Osama, the stock exchange will now operate as a private company. How will this work and, like you say, attract investment and revitalize the economy?
When you operate efficiently and more effectively, and you encourage all investments to be part of that stock market, after you really put a real good governance on that stock market. And the most important thing, the transparency. We used not to have any transparency of who owns this company or that company. For example, the cousin of a previous president, Rami Makhlouf, he used to own most of the stocks in the banks, more than 6 or 7 banks. He owns like 40 to 60% of them. But that piece of information were not released to all stockholders. And when we used to accuse that government that there's a corruption, there's that guy who really monopolized the whole economy, he monopolizes the stock market too, and nobody believed us from the government till they had a big fight over the money between Asma al-Assad, the wife of Bashar, and Rami Makhlouf. Then she starts accusing him of corruption, and she released all documents that this guy is full corrupt in the stock market. So now it's totally different. We are talking about good governance, transparency with the people, and we just started with very minimum companies and banks who used to be on the stock market. I'm expecting this to be not double, even like will be 2 years from now, more than 5 times the amount of companies that we have today.
And what impact is the easing of Western sanctions already having on Syria's economy? Obviously, international transfers are going to come back to life. What else is really important?
Oh, that will lead for more dates, will lead to more investment. It's very good signals to all investors that they are who are willing to invest in Syria, that they will be like part of the that stock market, so people can really buy their stocks, and so that even the Syrian people can be a partner by owning stocks in these companies if they are interested, for sure. And besides, now we have access to financial markets. We used to have no access whatsoever without the SWIFT and with the central bank. We are isolated from the whole financial world. No, right now we can have access to that global financial market. Especially, I'm expecting that many banks, international banks, will open branches in Syria, and they will really push and induce that growth rate and inject more money in the economy to have more investment, manufacturing, agriculture, tourism. As you may see, everybody is interested in getting to the Syrian market. CMA right now, they're managing the French company, managing Latakia port, Dubai World, ports. They are right now managing Tartus ports. Today we had the Saudi foreign minister with it's an officials from the financial arena to prepare after 2 weeks from today to bring many, I would say like tens of investors and companies, Saudis, to come to invest in Syria. Besides, right now they're negotiating with the 5 American companies about oil and gas. See, it's we are really attracting investors, and these companies, when they will operate from Syria, they might be part of the stock market, and any average Syrian can go and buy their stocks. So,
Dr. Osama Khadi, I do apologise, but we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that we can have you back on the show again soon. Thank you. Britain will build up to 12 new attack submarines following a major defence review. The plans are designed to prepare the UK to fight a modern war and counter threat from Russia. It comes as President Trump told Europe it needed to take more responsibility for its own security. Here's some of what the Prime Minister Keir Starmer said about the landmark Strategic Defence Review earlier today.
We are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready, to deliver peace through strength. I can announce today that we're going to build at least 6 new munitions factories in the United Kingdom, generating over 1,000 jobs. We will build thousands of new long-range weapons in the United Kingdom to boost European deterrence, supporting around 800 more jobs. we will defend our homeland by investing in our air and missile defence to better protect these islands.
We can now speak to former British MP and former chair of the UK Defence Select Committee, Tobias Alwood. Tobias, always great to have you on the show. First off, what's your initial reaction to the plans unveiled by the Prime Minister today? Is it enough to protect the UK from global threats?
Well, good afternoon. You heard the strong language there by the Prime Minister, and that's echoed right across the piece here. Britain needs to become war ready, if you like, given how dangerous the world is becoming. The threats we now face are more serious and less predictable than at any time since the Cold War. We've got this war raging in Europe. Russia hasn't changed its stance. New nuclear risks are there, as well as us on the receiving end of daily cyber attacks. So we do need to upgrade our defense posture. And like with many nations, we've fallen behind in how we approach defense over the last couple of decades. It's been a pretty easy couple of decades, but those days are now over because the very character of conflicts is changing as those threats indeed increase. So this defense review is certainly ambitious in overhauling and upgrading what Britain will look like. The big question, though, is whether the money will be there to spend what is actually quite elaborate plans to take our Army, Air Force, Navy, our cyber and space capabilities into another place.
Tobias, you say there that we've fallen behind over in the UK when it comes to defence. What happened with the Conservative government when they were in power? Why was not enough money put into defence? And why does it seem to be that Europe is clamouring to try and shore up its borders now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, but we need to place in perspective what the threats looked like 10 or 15 years ago. And when there's pressure on governments to provide money for domestic matters, for schools, for health and so forth, for local policing, one of the budgets that is easy to cut is defence. But now those threats are changing. We can see, even from Britain as well, that the world's getting more dangerous. There's ever greater demand to do something about it. But this defense review doesn't come with commitments on spending. We're going to have to wait a week or so before the government then has a full spending review, announcements of where all that money will go across the government departments. And then we'll also have to wait until, in fact, the end of the summer before the Ministry of Defense then spells out the 62 recommendations which have been made in today's paper as to how it will respond to that, how it will deal with those threats, the minutiae, if you like, the blueprints in how Britain's defence will look for the next decade.
Yes, I think that financially it's been questions asked because Starmer has avoided setting exact date for reaching the 3% defence spending target. But Tobias, moving on, how crucial is the UK's support when it comes to protecting other countries right now? Or do you think its lack of defence means it's just becoming less of a crucial ally for some countries? Like, could we put boots on the ground in Ukraine? Is there enough soldiers at the moment?
Yeah, you make a very important point. And I felt this when I served in the British Army, that actually Britain does more than just defend its own interests. We try and lead in Europe. We try to take a positive view of the world, but as a force for good, willing to step forward, perhaps when other nations hesitate. We do that because of our history, our interest, what happened during the Second World War, informing our global order and working closely with allies. We can only do that if we have the hard power backing our diplomacy. And that's why it's all the more important that we do upgrade our defense posture in this way. Because as you say, the world is getting more dangerous. It's more complicated than perhaps in the past because authoritarian states are actually starting to team up together. They're starting to work together to challenge that global order, to actually pursue an alternative vision as to where our world should go. So there's all the more reason, all the more pressure for Britain to sort itself out.
And I just want to ask you one last thought on these peace talks we saw today between Russia and Ukraine. Second round finished within an hour. What needs to happen next to get things moving a little bit more? Do we need to see sanctions on Russia? What needs to change?
Yeah, well, let me just express my frustration in the fact that as we talk about upgrading our defense posture, there also needs to be that will to fight, to stand up to enemies, to look them in the eye and say, no, you're not going to advance. And I'm afraid Russia, Putin specifically, has taken advantage of our timidity. If you think of all the debates we had over every single bit of kit that we've slid across the table to Ukraine, you know, from the simple missile systems to tanks, F-16s, and even those long-range missiles. There's been a public debate about it, about whether we're going to spook Putin into using the nuclear weapons and so forth, rather than having that Cold War statecraft that we saw around the Cuban Missile Crisis, to understand the escalatory ladder, but to do what's right for Ukraine. This war could have been over a long time ago had NATO had the strength of character to stand up and support a European nation in its hour of need. What we're seeing now, this audacious attack in Russia, is Ukraine's absolute desire to want to advance and continue fighting. So, long answer, I'm afraid, but the short answer is there is actually no place at the moment for either side to come to the table to agree any form of ceasefire, let alone a peace agreement, because neither of them think that that's in their interest to do so. Both will keep fighting.
Tobias Alwood, a long answer is always okay. Thank you again for joining us. Always great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
A reminder of our top stories. Russia and Ukraine have agreed to exchange prisoners after peace talks in Istanbul, as Turkey says it will take steps to arrange a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. A 45-year-old man has been charged with murder after an attack at a rally supporting Israeli hostages in Colorado. And trading on the Damascus Securities Exchange has restarted after being closed for 6 months as leaders plan to rebuild its economy. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. The rail deal is coming up next. Plus, of course, we'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for watching.